countrymen and women, Ohioans, lend me your ears on this Friday as we're working for the weekend, okay? Because I'm going to try to lay this out so that it makes the most sense and explain it. Because I thought a lot about this, and I love this time of year. I love it. I've mentioned it before. I absolutely love last weekend, the high school football state finals, and you got a Pacers game and the lighting of the tree and a Christmas carol and all that. I love it. Kicking off the season, coming off of Thanksgiving, I love it. I love, and for years I loved the tradition of like the holiday season, and Indiana and Kentucky would be playing in basketball, or the Big Four Classic, or the Bank One Classic to go back to then, or Purdue playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and all in Pacer games and holiday shopping and everything coming awake, and everybody championship games and Army Navy and all the things that take place of like the dreary 40-degree sun setting at 4:30 in the afternoon, but it doesn't matter because they're great games to watch, and fires and people to get together with and everything else, right? I love all of it. And yes, the Colts are getting ready to play in Jacksonville. Yes, the Pacers tonight are taking on the Bulls. Yes, Purdue's got a big matchup with Iowa State, a big one in college basketball this weekend. But let me explain, and I understand it. In Indianapolis, we are the hospitality capital of the world. Nobody does it better. Nobody does it better than Indianapolis when it comes to developing a stage, putting it out there, getting the spotlights and the strobe lights dancing through the air of saying something big is happening here. Nobody does it better.
You know, when I hear you say strobe lights and things like that, I think of the Deinschweiss.
Very similar, yes. Do we happen to have that, by the way? Your sweat from Munich, right?
I should have had that on the queue if I was thinking about it. I'm sorry.
Nobody puts on these events better than Indianapolis. And let me explain. If you're driving in from Ohio, we welcome you. If you are a fan of Purdue, we understand. Or if you're a fan of Notre Dame, I get your frustration in having to kind of sit back now and watch how things fall with the college football playoff. But let me explain to you the significance of this weekend. And let me explain the theme of today's show. Friends, Ohioans, countrymen and women, lend me your ear. I grew up in this, what I consider to be the best city in the land, and I've been to all 50 states. And yes, I know that there are fabulous cities with fabulous locales, but I love Indianapolis. When you grew up in Indianapolis in the time frame that I did, everybody's had their turn at bat. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway is a big part of what put Indianapolis on the map in terms of the largest single-day spectator sport. And for many years, the second largest was qualifying. At least we used to tell ourselves that. But even still, when you get over 1/3 people in one spot to watch a sporting event every single year, and the camaraderie that comes with that, and people that come from all over, and within that sport, eyeballs from around the world watching what takes place in Indianapolis, we love it. The Colts moved here in 1984. They had relative obscurity and anonymity on the NFL stage for many years. They made a trade for Eric Dickerson in 87. They went to a playoff game. They came within a whisker of the Super Bowl in the mid-90s. And then Peyton Manning was drafted, and suddenly the Colts became the epicenter of the football world, went to 2 Super Bowls as members of the Indianapolis Colts and won one of them, hoisted the Lombardi, and had the most famous player and arguably the greatest player in the history of the game calling Indianapolis, Indiana home. The Colts have had their turn at the plate. And they still are the driving force of what we talk about on the regular on this program. The Pacers, as we have talked about often, in the 70s, ABA greatness, then transitioned into the NBA. Again, obscurity, anonymity, brown curtain. Come out and see Kool and the Gang after the game when you watch Julius Erving drop 32 on your Pacers. Jose Slaughter, this might be the year where he breaks into the starting rotation, but be sure to come out and see Kevin McHale and Larry Bird. And then afterwards, see the fabulous, Dom Rickles perform. And then in the mid-'90s, the Pacers have their breakthrough. Reggie Miller, Hicks versus Knicks. The sports world sees what's going on with the Pacers. Indiana basketball already had given us our taste of that because Bob Knight was the biggest that there was in terms of college basketball icons. They won 3 national championships with Bob Knight, and they'd already won 2 by the time he arrived. They were undefeated in 1976. And Indiana basketball and the cream and crimson of IU and the candy striped pants took their turn at the plate, and they were the lead dominating story for a long time in this town. I've seen Purdue. I went and saw Purdue play against John Elway in Stanford in the early 80s, and Purdue was already coming off of an era where Mark Herman was the most valuable player of 3 different bowl games in 3 different years. And then Purdue gets Joe Tiller. Football or basketball on grass. Drew Brees is throwing the ball all over the place. And lo and behold, he does the Holy Toledo and throws the touchdown with Ohio State, Seth Morales, and before you know it, boom. Purdue is the epicenter and the talking point of college football in Indiana and throughout the Big Ten and throughout the country. And Drew Brees goes on to become the most prolific passer in the history of the National Football League. And anytime that he can tell anybody about it, he talks about his pride of Purdue. Notre Dame goes without saying. Elite program. Notre Dame had their turn at the plate. Alan Pinkett, I think about, great running back in the day. Obviously, Joe Montana played there. You go all the way back to the great eras. It goes without saying. Era Parseghian. Before that, Newt Rockne. Notre Dame has never not been relevant in the state of Indiana or nationally speaking when it comes to college football. And while Notre Dame might not be right here in the Indianapolis market, and it may be some 2.5 or 3 hours away, obviously there is a huge entrench and a pride of the fact that Notre Dame is in the state of Indiana and still represents a lot of the values that we love in Indiana and has been, and again is continuing to be, an elite national program. It's never dipped from that. This town has put on events like nobody's business. Final Fours became routine in this town where we needed new storylines to make them exciting because in 1980 when the Final Four was here, you had Iowa, you had Purdue and Joe Barry Carroll. You had Louisville and you had UCLA, and Louisville wins the title in 1980. And then we had to wait until 1991 when the Final Four came back at the Hoosier Dome, which a year before had hosted the high school basketball state finals because we wanted everybody to know that nobody does it like we do in Indiana when it comes to high school basketball and the enthusiasm. Damon Bailey, 1990. And then in 1991, the Final Four. Duke, UNLV, North Carolina, Kansas. Grant Hill, huge alley-oop. Huge upset. UNLV gets beat. 1991. And then we became so accustomed to hosting the Final Four because nobody does it better than Indianapolis that we eventually needed new storylines to make it exciting when it was here, like Butler. And Butler, who took their turn being the toast of the town. Butler with Brad Stevens. The stunning upsets, the knocking off Syracuse earlier, and the turn of coaches where you just kept getting one coach to the next, that Butler was the opportunity for them to maybe go elsewhere, but then the next coach that would come along was just as good, if not better. And Butler makes their run, and Butler gets their turn. And Gordon Hayward is inches away from one of the biggest Cinderella stories in the history of college basketball in nearly defeating Duke in the Final Four. And Butler gets to play a Final Four right here in Indianapolis, and the storyline is, how great is it? They went to class this morning and then got on school buses and drove it down Capitol and went and played in the Final Four. And, of course, we were accustomed at that point to, again, big events taking place here. The Pan Am Games taking place here, all of it. And when Purdue went to the Final Four with Zach Edey, when Purdue went to the national championship game and Matt Painter's got them rolling, they're number 1 in the country. They got Iowa State this weekend, as I mentioned. And Purdue, from a college basketball standpoint, is at the epicenter of everything right now. And they absolutely deserve every flower they get. And when Purdue went to the Final Four, and when Notre Dame played in the national championship game, last year when Notre Dame made their run, including of course, beating a local team to start out the college football playoff. But when Notre Dame was making their run a year ago, and they're not even necessarily an in-market team, but they're in Indiana, and we had guests on virtually every week talking about Notre Dame. And when Purdue went to the Final Four, and they broke through, and they slayed the dragon, and the ghosts of 15 seeds passed and 16 seeds passed, and they found their way to the Final Four. And Zach Edey led them there, and Matt Painter had it rolling. We did a show on this program on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan called Query and Company, where I sat here and said, you know what? You long-suffering Purdue basketball fans who had to sit and listen to the conversation forever about Bob Knight and Indiana and everything else that goes with it, and even though Gene Cady won 3 straight Big Ten titles in the late 80s, you had to hear instead about Steve Alford and Jay Edwards and everything else. It is your time to shine. It's your time to call in. It's your time to gloat. It's your time to push out your chest. The one team, the one program that has never had that opportunity. Sure, in 1945, they had an unbeaten season. Sure, some 56 years ago, 57 years ago, 58 years ago, whatever it might be, they went to the Rose Bowl. But the program that has lost more games than anybody in the history of college football heading into this season, Northwestern's now eclipsed it. The program that at one time took a timeout to take a team photo in front of the scoreboard because they were up 7-0 in a game. The program that in my childhood, when Andy Burt's grandfather was on the board of trustees for Indiana University, the biggest perk about that was we got great football seats, except for that I was too young to realize that basically anybody could have gotten great football seats because nobody was going to watch them play. Because there was never in anybody's atmosphere, there was never in anybody's wildest imagination, there was never, ever, ever, during the time that Butler was playing in Final Fours and Purdue was playing in Final Fours and Indiana was winning national championships and Notre Dame was winning national championships and the Indy 500 was pulling a 16 rating and the Pacers were breaking through and going into the NBA Finals and getting within a half of winning the NBA title, and the Colts were hoisting Lombardis. Never during that time did we ever, in anybody's wildest imagination, begin to think that the possibility was there that when the Big Ten championships would be hoisted at Lucas Oil Stadium, hosted at Lucas Oil Stadium, and the title trophies would be hoisted into the air, that this team would, in fact, have their opportunity, and that we would have a show on a Friday that would give the opportunity for the long-suffering fans of this program to soak it in, enjoy it, and have their day. But guess what? It is their turn at the plate. And Ohioans, I know you're not going to like it. I know you don't like seeing it on the JW Marriott. Purdue fans, you're number one in college basketball. I totally get it. But nobody ever thought this would happen, that on a championship weekend, we would be hearing this emanating from throughout the streets of downtown Indianapolis. The Indiana Fighting Hoosiers. The Indiana Hoosiers are one win away from winning the Big Ten championship. And even if they don't win that game, the Indiana Hoosiers are more than likely going to get a bye in the college football playoff and find themselves within a whisker of a national championship. And they're doing it with the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year in Fernando Mendoza, who may put himself in contention for the Heisman or cement it with a great game against Ohio State. And Curt Cignetti is the coach not just of the year, not just of the decade. He might be so far the coach of the century in what he has turned around in the greatest story in college football. I don't care whether you're a fan of Alabama, Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. What Indiana has done to put themselves now in this position with this entire city fired up and ready to go and ready to get going here for the Big Ten championship against undoubtedly one of the richest, one of the most dynamic, one of the most talented, one of the most accomplished programs in the history of college football, the Buckeyes of Ohio State. Yes, Ohio State, I'm giving you your flowers. Great program. Unbelievable coach. A level that they can turn up the wick and probably play offensively to the point where they've got receivers that can play on a Sunday. If Ohio State just decides to take their receiving core and put them in a back corner, no problem. A week from Sunday when the Colts come back home, they probably could use any of them on the field, and the Colts have a good receiving core, but they are that good. But the Indiana Hoosiers, are in the Big Ten championship game. And over the course of today, I want to invite you, Indiana fans, to go ahead and gloat. Those of you who have been long suffering for 55 years, sitting down at Memorial Stadium with 20,000 other people there, wondering why you're sitting through a rainstorm to watch, Lorenzo White run all over him for Michigan State. It is your time. It's your turn at the plate. And today, over the course of today, we will celebrate those of you who have been waiting forever and never, ever, ever thought you would see this day. Now, one guy who has an objectivity about him, because he has to, is Todd Blackledge, who, of course, is with NBC when it comes to Big Ten college football. And I want to get the objective side of it. Because, listen, I'm going to be a homer today because I never thought I'd see it at 53 years old that Indiana is right here, and I know how good Ohio State is. But Todd Blackledge joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line to break down this game. Todd, it is a pleasure. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jake. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I'm fired up because
you gotta be feeling great, right?
I never thought I'd see it, man. I never ever thought I'd see it. Now, I know Ohio State is outstanding. I know they're outstanding, but let's begin with Indiana in this story of Curt Cignetti. And it's not a new story, Todd. It's season 2 of it. But as somebody who's been around the game a lot, to what do you pinpoint the ability of this guy to get this program to this point?
Well, it is the second year, but it's no less remarkable still. I mean, the job that he has done and the turnaround and how immediate the turnaround has been, and bringing the guys in from JMU, whether it's staff guys or players that ended up being outstanding Big Ten players as well, it truly is remarkable. And it obviously started with him and starts with him and his leadership and his process and culture. I think it's one of the great stories of college football since I've been covering it. I think, what Nick Saban did at Alabama over a period of time and just the championship level caliber that he had that program in was an amazing story to me also. But this, what Curt Cignetti done is remarkable. And I think I don't think they're going anywhere soon. I think they're better this year than they were a year ago, and they were pretty good last year.
When you look at, and you played obviously, Todd, for the biggest of programs, right? I mean, at Penn State. And when you're playing for a legendary coach in Joe Paterno and national championships and all of that at Penn State, it's kind of expected when you go there, right? I mean, you knew what the pressure was going to be from the time that you arrived. In Indiana's case, and I know, again, it's year number 2, and they have become accustomed to winning under Curt Cignetti. But at the same time, there is so much at stake with this game in their home state against that program.
Right.
Do fans get nervous about it? Do you think players do?
I don't think they get nervous. I mean, there's a normal energy, and everybody has butterflies, before a game of this magnitude. But then once kickoff starts and you start playing, it just gets back down to playing ball, and doing what you've done week in and week out. And again, in the case of Curt Cignetti and his staff, and the same thing I would say with Ryan Day and his staff, they have a process in place, a day-to-day, practice-to-practice, game-to-game process that doesn't deviate just because this is a different caliber of game. I mean, they treat everything the same way. It's in a different venue. Be a different crowd makeup kind of thing, but at the same time, they're going to stick to their process, and I think both of them are very confident in the process and in the way they do things.
Todd Blackledge is my guest. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Todd, when you look at this game, and I know Ohio State's outstanding, so too is Indiana. This really is, to some extent, like that little Spider-Man gif, right, of two strengths looking at one another because both teams seemingly do the same things well. Which of these two teams has the vulnerability that is more easier to expose for the other?
Well, that's going to be a fun thing to watch. I don't know. I would not say that either team has a glaring vulnerability. I think they're both really well-coached teams. I think they're really solid in all 3 phases of the game, and I think that's why they are where they are, and both being undefeated. The one thing I will say, when I studied Indiana's game against Penn State, because I had Penn State, Nebraska, a couple games after that, but when I studied that game, it concerned me a little bit that the protection for Mendoza was, he was running for his life some.
Right.
Now he came back at the end and led a great drive, and the protection was good enough in that last drive for him to hit some big time throws. But for a lot of that game, he was under duress, and so that that was the one little red flag maybe. But again, I think the other part of that, he's playing without his favorite target and one of his best receivers in Surratt, and so that took something away from their pass game. But I think that's if I'm Indiana, that's my first thing. I've got to make sure I protect the quarterback, and that's because he gives them a chance, and as a dual threat guy. And I do think his legs in this game can be a real factor. At your point in the season now where, you don't hold anything back. You give it your best shot, and I think that's Curt Cignetti's personality. I think that's Mendoza's personality, and I think that, part of their plan will involve him making plays with his legs as well. I think he is more of a threat to do that than Julian Sayin is on the other side.
That's okay. So let me ask you this. Todd Blackledge, my guest. Indiana does have an ability to get to quarterbacks on their defensive front. I mean, their pass rush is very stout. But does that matter against Sayin? I haven't seen him enough to know how he is when he has to kind of – if he's got to be slippery in the pocket. I know he's an incredibly accurate passer, but can you disrupt him at all?
Well, I think you can, and I think you have to. I mean, if you want to have a chance to beat them, you have to find ways to make him uncomfortable, because this is a team – this is not like some other Ohio State teams I've seen in the past or most college football teams. This is a team that throws the ball better than they run the football. And I think their running game has gotten better. I think Bo Jackson has kind of emerged as their featured back. I think the left side of their offensive line from a run blocking standpoint is very solid, better than the right side of their line. But the biggest thing they do and the best thing they do, because of the skill set of Julian Sayin and then the skill set in particular of the guys out wide, and Tate and Smith and now the tight end Max Clare, is throw the football. And so you have to defend them maybe even a little bit more so like you would defend an NFL team, which is we've got to affect the quarterback. We want to defend the run, but you don't go into playing Ohio State saying we have to stop the run. That's first and foremost. We have to stop the run because they'll throw it, and if you can't make the quarterback uncomfortable, if you can't give him different looks, if you can't put a little pressure on him, make him hold the ball a little bit longer, get him out of his comfort zone, he's just too accurate of a passer, and those guys on the outside, you can't cover them. So, on a consistent basis. So yes, you have to find a way to make him uncomfortable, and I think that Indiana, with their simulated pressures and the way they kind of do things defensively, I think they have a chance to do that.
Todd, do you believe that regardless of what happens in this game, and I know how bad Indiana fans want to, especially want to beat Ohio State, because to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? But do both of these teams deserve a first-round bye regardless of what happens tomorrow?
It's a good question. I don't know that will happen. And I don't know for sure. Based on last year, whether that first round bye is a great thing or not.
Good point. Yeah.
I think if you're playing well and you've got things on a roll and you're healthy, I think most guys are going to keep playing. Now if you get some guys banged up in this game and you need a little extra time, then it can be beneficial. But I'm not sure it's the greatest thing to have, especially if you get a home game, and another chance to play in front of your home crowd in December in a playoff mode would be pretty awesome.
Lastly, Bo Jackson, you mentioned the running back for Ohio State. We have mentioned it several times this week. He is of no relation. He is, of course, of the same name, but no relation to the Bo Jackson Heisman winner and legendary running back out of Auburn. sometimes I feel bad when guys have the same name of great players because that means one of the two kind of gets lost in it. And no bigger example of that, and both of them are fabulous players. Kurt Warner, the quarterback, unfortunately, I think, Todd, made some people forget about Kurt Warner, the running back, and the one that you played with at Penn State and went on to Seattle, I think is one of the most underrated and underappreciated running backs of the late 80s. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I'm pretty biased, but I thought he was the best guy I ever played with, ever teammate. He was an outstanding player at Penn State, and even though his career was shortened, by a knee injury when he was in the NFL, he was still incredibly productive, made a couple Pro Bowls, got the Seahawks into the playoffs. He was a great, great player, and he had the ability to, to me, his superpower as a running back was he had the ability to cut and move laterally without losing speed. And just very few guys that I've seen, have that ability to do that. But he was a special player.
Over 1,400 yards on 2 occasions, 4 over 1,000 yards in his NFL career. Loved Kurt Warner, and I love those Seahawks uniforms, so there's probably a bias for me there as well. Loved them.
Yeah.
Todd, I appreciate the time. What's that?
Funny. I was just going to say one thing that's funny. You talked about Bo Jackson and having the same name. The irony of that is his actual real name is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
but he goes by Bo. So
if
he's
you're
not related to either one.
Of course, here's the thing, Todd. Let's be real, okay? I mean, he's going to be fine no matter which one of those he replicates, right? I mean, either one. He gets the career of either one of those two guys. He's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's right.
Todd, I appreciate the time. I know it's a busy time, and certainly enjoy watching you with all of your coverage, especially on NBC, and appreciate the time today.
You got it, man. Enjoy the weekend.
Appreciate it. Todd Blackledge joining us, Java House, Peel and Pour guest line. Big show lined up. Chris Dittoe going to join us 1 o'clock today on the program. We will talk Colts. J.P. Shadrick going to join us at 1:30 and Kevin Bowen at 2 o'clock. So we've got a lot going on over the course of today. But when we come back, I'm going to listen, you Indiana fans, you've been waiting forever for it, right? You've been waiting forever for it. And we did this for Purdue when they made, and I know it's not yet the Final Four, but this is big for the Hoosiers in terms of getting to play Ohio State and seeing Indiana painted in the end zone. If you are somebody who's been going to IU games forever, if you've got an uncle, you've got a grandfather, you've got a dad, you've got a mother, you've got an aunt, you've got a cousin, somebody you know that you think to yourself, this is for them, then I want to know about it at 239-1070. I arrived, I should say, today, walked in the building, and I'm wearing my, again, I know it. I know that by the definition and the letter of the law, with this job, there is to be an objectivity. And I also know and understand.
There's a law about that?
There is.
I didn't know that. What's the letter?
What's that?
What's the letter?
P.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it stands for professionalism.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know you had that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I carried it forever and then just decided a year ago, you know what? I'm Indy through and through, baby. And I bleed the torch of Indiana. And I was thrilled when Purdue went to the Final Four. Thrilled. Because I knew what it meant to my cousin that went to Purdue. I knew what it meant to, my uncle. So many Purdue fans that I knew and grew up with, and, kids I went to school with that went to Purdue. I was thrilled when Butler went to the Final Four because it was such an incredible story. And, yeah, when I was growing up, I was a diehard, obnoxious, completely myopic Indiana fan. But now I'm a fan of all the teams. And when they are doing well, I want them to be celebrated on this radio station and this radio show. And each group of fans should get their turn at the plate. And we should all kumbaya, baby. All celebrate what is local. And that's what I want to do. And so, I have my IU, what is it, the Bison?
Yep.
The Bison fellow. This is the 70s vintage of it. Of course, I could have worn one of my Why Not Indiana shirts, whatever it might be. But I want to, and so I get here today and I see Eddie's wearing an Indiana sweatshirt. I saw Scott Johnson's wearing an Indiana football jersey. He has the one retro one that exists within the free market. I saw Landon's wearing an Indiana sweatshirt. All in, baby. And I know it's Ohio against the world for Ohio State, but it's Indiana against the world, I guess, this weekend. Jim joins us at 239-1070. I want people to let me know why and who they're cheering for to see this get done, because we never thought we would see it. How are you, Jim?
I'm great. How are you, Jake?
I'm fired up, man. I'm fired up. Jim, are you an Indiana fan?
I am. Huge.
If you don't mind me asking, Jim, how old a fella are you?
I am 62.
Okay. You began going to Indiana football games or following them in what era?
The bad era. How about that?
So
before, like when I was in
2
high
years
school.
ago. Right?
Yes. That's why when I heard your question, I immediately thought of only myself. As this is for me. Because in my 4 years in Bloomington, we won 3 games in 4 years.
Okay, so you would have been there. I'm just guessing here. You would have been there right around probably starting out with Sam Weich and then into the Mallory year where he went winless in his first year before he kind of got things going, right?
My freshman year was Corso's last year,
Gotcha.
0-11.
Okay. And then you saw Weich, right?
Yep. And he went winless as well. And then Mallory came in, and I think he won 1 game and then 2 or something like that.
I think Weich might have won like 1 or 2 games, and then Mallory was. I know Mallory was winless in his first year, but yes, Jim. Listen,
maybe that's what it was. Yeah, it was such a bad experience. I tried to forget about it.
Did you go to games as a student, Jim?
Every game.
Yes,
every game.
I love
Went
it.
to every game.
I love it, Jim. All right, so are you going tomorrow night?
Absolutely.
You got to do it, right? I mean, and here's the thing, Jim.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is, in reality, the game tomorrow night is kind of meaningless in reality, right? But it's not.
You agree? I couldn't agree more.
It's not, though.
Absolutely.
Jim, I appreciate it. Win it for Jim, baby. Win it for Jim. Andrew is next. Andrew, what's up?
Hey, Jake. How you doing?
I'm all right. You?
Good. We got IU all over here this weekend, so pumped about that.
Okay, so are you going to the basketball game tomorrow?
I'm just going to the basketball game, yeah.
So you're not going to the football game?
No,
Let
I'm
me
not.
ask you something, married. Let me ask you something, Andrew. Are you a married fellow?
I am
Yeah,
with a
see that-
4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Well, and the other thing, too, is the wife put the financial restriction on it, right? Because there's quite the disparity between the basketball ticket and the football ticket, right?
Yeah. About $1,000 maybe.
No, it's unbelievable. Okay, Andrew, did you go to Indiana?
Yeah, I graduated in 2011.
Okay, so you saw some okay teams. Am I right about that? Was that the I'm trying to think. My years get foggy. Was that the Kevin Wilson era?
I graduated. So first year was Hepner died that summer. Lynch took over.
Okay.
Went to the Insight.com Bowl. And then Wilson started after. I actually was an equipment manager for the team from 8 to 10. So I
Now
had
hold
a
on.
spring
Now hold
practice.
on, Andrew. Hang on. Hold the phone. So you were an equipment manager for Indiana football.
I was.
That doesn't earn you the right to call down there and demand a ticket?
I tried that for a regular season this year, and it wasn't. We got them last year, but this year they were a little bit tighter on them.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm not saying they upgraded their equipment managers, Andrew, but let's be real here, right? I mean, come on. All right, Andrew. Listen. I'm hoping they get it done. Like I said, I told Jim the game's meaningless, but it's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Andrew, listen, cheer them on tomorrow in the basketball standpoint. That's going to be a tough one. Louisville's pretty good. I think Indiana's good too, though. But football side of it, enjoy the game, all right? I don't know. I was going to go to the game, and now I'm not going to the game. And so, Eddie, what is your plan tomorrow for the big game?
Wait, which game? Because you were talking about
Football.
Okay, football. I'm going over to a buddy's house tomorrow night.
Alec?
No.
Well, I'm calling bluff here.
No, tomorrow's Alec's birthday, so happy early birthday, Alec.
You know, your friends are kind of like Indiana football seasons. Hard to find a second one, right?
Really? You're going that low of a blow? Seriously?
I'm just telling you. We'll get back into the conversation about IU. Chris Dittoe joining us at 18. When we come back, there is good news for the Colts heading into Jacksonville. I'll explain next. Eddie, by any chance, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? This from Indie Girl Cindy. I was on the IU campus from 85 to 88. I was at the game in Columbus in 87 when IU beat Ohio State 31-10. I remember that like it was yesterday, by the way. That was Earl Bruce's famous darkest day in Ohio State history.
Is this Cindy Denise, listener?
Well, I ran the breaking news sounder because I thought it might be that we have female listener 31. Unless we do have a Cindy already registered, do we not?
We do.
Okay, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? This just in, we're still stuck on 30. I thought we had 31, but I guess it sounds like we're still stuck on 30, right?
Didn't we have, I forget her name, the former IU PUI, now IU Indy soccer player, was she not? Was she 30 or 31?
Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder by chance? This just in, we are actually at 31 female listeners. Still looking for 32, however. The next female listener we get that is new to this program will be Edrin James, 32, right?
Yep.
Okay. The Colts are in Jacksonville, speaking of Edrin James, coming up on Sunday. This is a place that has been an absolute nightmare for them.
House of Horrors.
You know, I usually say House of Horrors, but I feel like I really have to enunciate and accentuate that second syllable of horrors.
Yeah, that's right.
Because otherwise people then start to, they're saying to themselves, I turned on the show, why is Jake talking about Amsterdam?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. The red light district.
Which, by the way, apparently you're not allowed to take photos with your
stupid.
iPhone. That is correct. How stupid you, I believe is what the girl said to me.
I can't remember. I just remember you stupid.
You can, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, when we were in Amsterdam, I was walking through the red light district and I thought, well, this is, and it's like this kind of commercialized, it's like Disney World almost, right? But with red lights everywhere. And so we're walking along and I get out my phone to kind of videotape it. And Shannon's like, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do that. And then one of the girls starts knocking on the glass. And I thought, well, they're very aggressive with their sales approach. And then she opened the door or the window thing that she was standing in. And she yelled at me, how stupid you. And I didn't realize this, but they can actually take your phone in this circumstance. I'm guilty as charged. I mean, cultural naivete here. So on this video, all you can hear is a girl yelling, how stupid you, and Shannon in the distance saying, nope, that's it. You're on your own. Nope.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. She thought for sure we were getting arrested. The good news for the Colts in this game, if you were looking for positives, Daniel Jones yesterday going through individual drills, looking, again, I mean, that injury is not going to just immediately go away. But the only player, Kevin Bone is going to join us coming up about a little over an hour and a half from now, pointing this out. The only player that is on the injury report for did not practice for multiple days this week is Sauce Gardner. And we knew, obviously, that Sauce Gardner was not going to be a go. I think it's safe to say that he misses 3 games. Not going on IR, though. So that would mean that they do not anticipate that he will miss 4. Otherwise, you would probably just put him on IR. But the Jags, as we talked about yesterday with Matt Taylor, are a little bit of an enigma because I think that we think, generically speaking, when it comes to Jacksonville, that they are going to be defensively aggressive. And they have a quarterback that I have thought the world of in Trevor Lawrence, but the reality is that it is becoming more clear that what Eddie has said about Trevor Lawrence is just the consistency is not there to where you'd like it. When you get good Trevor Lawrence, he's pretty good. But you just they have challenges getting that from one quarter to the next, let alone one game to the next. 239-1070 is the telephone number. Nancy joining us. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good, Jake. How you doing?
Nancy, let me tell you something. It's a Friday, right?
Right.
It's a beautiful day outside. Now, I don't like cold weather, but it's sunny outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy, I'm driving down today, and I'm driving down Capitol, and I'm thinking about the fact of everything that's going to happen in this awesome sports weekend, and the fact that I basically get to sit here and talk about it for 3 hours with fabulous, beautiful people like yourself. So how in the world can I complain about anything, Nancy, right?
You can't, Jake. Do you know who this is, Nancy Chumbley?
Nancy, the pride and joy of Henchman Fire Suits.
There
Nancy,
you go.
let me tell you something. For those that don't know, Nancy with Henchman Fire Suits, and if you want to talk about the craftsmanship of this woman, the artistry of which the voice you're hearing, I remember like it was yesterday when Dario Franchitti wanted to do a tribute to his hero Jim Clark, and Nancy took one photo and one big patch of fabric, and the next thing I knew had the most perfect, absolute replica fire suit for Dario Franchitti to walk around in, and I've never seen a guy that won 3 Indy 500s be more proud of anything in the world. Now, Nancy, are you implying, Nancy, that you were listening to the show today by chance?
I'm implying that my brother, Joe, who's called in many times and listens faithfully, just gave me a call and said, Nance, hurry, your buddy Jake just set up that 30-second caller.
Now, hold on. Now, Nancy, here's the thing, though, because we have to get verification that you've actually listened to the program before we can lock you in as female listener number 32. 31 or 32, Eddie?
32, Edger and James, remember?
So, Nancy, have you listened to the program before?
Yes, I have. Of course I have. You know, besides Dario looking hot in his suit, we have Jake looking hot in the suit we made for him as well.
Okay, hold on. Can you say that one more time for me, Nancy? Aside from Dario, what else do you have?
We have a Jake Query suit we made, and wow, did he look hot in that suit.
Eddie, if you could, please, the breaking news sounder. Officially female caller number 32, Nancy. Now, you know what, Nancy? That was such a great endorsement, and because of your affiliation with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 33 is the magic number. You are female listener 32 and 33. How's that?
Woo!
All right.
Three doggies.
We're sitting on 33, Eddie. I love it. Nancy, I love you. Appreciate it. And happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you. Nancy is the absolute best. Nancy Chumley at Henchman Fire Suits over on the near west side. Does all of the fire suits for IndyCar Radio.
Edger and James and Miles Turner.
Oh, boy. 33. Ashley Ambrose? Melvin Bullitt, wasn't he 33? Or 33 in the starting grid. Nancy, female caller, 32 and 33. Chris Dittoe, by the way. Chris Dittoe told me yesterday, I said, hey, can you come on the show? I want to talk to an Indiana football player about what this means. And Dittoe said to me, I'm so excited I might hyperventilate on the air. So we're going to find out. And if you know what I'll say? If he tells me that he's excited about this weekend with Indiana football, you know what I'll say in response to that, Eddie?
Dominic Rhodes, Jake.
Oh, Dominic Rhodes. This should be the Super Bowl MVP. If Chris says to me, I am so stoked about this, Jake, you know what my response will be?
Why not Indiana?
No, my response will be ditto. He joins us next. Bill Benner, one of the great pillar media people in Indianapolis, sends me the following. Jake, one of my best friends, Jim, has been an IU football season ticket holder for 50 years. We sit together. He named his kids Bill and Mallory. Last year, we traveled to 12 of the 13 games. This year, we've been to 9 of the 12, and, of course, we'll be there tomorrow night, however far they go. He owns a small business in Connorsville, but has made the drive to and from Bloomington more than 1,000 times, and those return trips have often not been enjoyable. This IU season is for him. That from Bill. Now, Ron with Chicago's Pizza. As a matter of fact, love Ron and Chicago's Pizza. Jake,
fantastic.
I'm a class of 75 IU graduate, but truthfully, I was never a long-suffering IU football fan because the dead don't suffer. But I'm enjoying the resurrection immensely. For so many people, as I mentioned off the top of the show, each sports entity and property of this market, Butler basketball, Indiana basketball, Purdue football, Purdue basketball, Notre Dame football, all of it, they've each had their turn. They've each had their spot in the batter's box, their moment in the sun. And that time has arrived this weekend for Indiana football. And this is just Christmas Eve because you got the college football playoff, which is obviously a certainty for Indiana regardless of what happens tomorrow night. But to be able to see the Indiana painted in the end zone at Lucas Oil Stadium and over 60,000 people there going up against the defending national champions, and Indiana football being merited and being justified and being legitimately a top 2 team in the country with a chance to ascend to number 1 is unbelievable. And one of the guys that is enjoying it as much as anybody, played in 31 games over 4 years for Indiana, threw for over 3,000 yards as their quarterback. Chris Dittoe joins me on the show, and he has been breathing into a brown paper bag for a week and a half in preparation. Not because of this this appearance, but because of the game. Chris, how are you?
Oh, Jake, I'm doing great, and you couldn't be more right. I feel, and this might sound really corny, but I actually feel, I haven't felt like this in a long time, and it feels like I've felt like the night before a game. And honestly, like you said, I feel like I'm nervous. I've got butterflies, jittery, hard to sleep. And it's just so much fun to think about the game tomorrow night for all the reasons you just mentioned, for all the people that have followed Indiana football for decades. And we've never had this opportunity. So it's a feeling that I haven't felt in a really, really long time, and I love it.
Chris, let's go back to this. And listen, I want to be clear here, right? I in no means am I saying any of this to disparage the efforts of you, your teammates, and those that came before, right? But the reality is, as you know, it's beyond, the wildest dreams of anybody, really, that here is where Indiana is. Until last year with what they did a year ago, because obviously the groundwork was laid. But when you were a player at Indiana, and I know that you guys believe, I get it, and you had good coaches and all of that. But was there ever a time where you almost felt like, I guess in the end, we are not the Michigans, we're not the Ohio States? How much did just branding or perception become one of the challenges that you faced as a player, if that makes sense?
It does, and I think it was a huge factor for us mentally, because I think when you're getting recruited, no matter if it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and you're getting recruited to a Big Ten school, whether it's Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, you feel like if you can play in that conference, you can play with anybody, you can beat anybody, but at the end of the day, we would still play at a place like, in Columbus, or play at a place like Happy Valley or at Michigan. And while back in the 90s, we would compete for a half, or we would compete for 3.5 quarters, and then inevitably we would do something to lose the game, whether it would be turn the ball over, or it would be give up a big play, or a kickoff return, or a punt return for a touchdown, and the game would just flip, and then all the momentum would be lost. And I think a perfect example kind of in that regard for us in the 90s was when we played Wisconsin this year, and we were only up 10-7 at half. And everyone was frustrated and like, what is wrong with this team? We are not, it was just, and I was at the game, and I'm just like, do you
Wisconsin used to be us. We used to be the ones that were battling a top 15 Wisconsin team or a top 10 Ohio State team, and we would be tied at half, or we would be, down 3 points in the third quarter, and the Ohio State or Michigan would then take over and beat us by 3 or 4 scores, like we did against Wisconsin, if I'm making sense. And so it's crazy to see the shoe on our foot, to watch us play a game like we did against Wisconsin, be down 10-7, everybody get frustrated, and then us turn it on and win that game, because that was us in the 90s. We were Wisconsin in the 90s, and we would battle for 3 quarters and then inevitably lose the game. And I think a lot of it has to do with the tradition, the expectation, all of that why we would lose the games back then. And now we've just totally flipped the script, and it's been incredible to see, and I can't believe it continues to happen.
I think, Chris, one of the things, Chris Dittoe's my guest, Java House Peel and Port guest line, the former Indiana quarterback. One of the things to me that has been the most remarkable about this is a lot of what you're talking about, I have always felt, the 3-quarter compete, right, is depth. I mean, Ohio State or Michigan, they're rotating subliminally. Right. They're rotating guys in every third play in quarter 1 or 3 that are also, you're going from a 5-star to a 4 3/4 star guy, right?
Yeah.
And in Indiana, you didn't have the luxury of that depth. And I still don't know that Curt Cignetti's group now has the luxury of that depth, but what they have is this incredible ability to almost know the offense or the game plan or the scheme of the opponent more so than the opponent does. The level of coaching and fine-tooth like comb of every aspect of every angle of the field with this group, to me, has been the most, just amazing thing to watch. What has been your observation in that regard?
I totally agree, and I think when you watch, who was it that we played earlier this year? I think it was UCLA, and they ran a fake punt against our defense. And if you watched how we executed that play defensively, I think it was like a reverse, fake punt reverse, and we had a guy in every single position that needed to be where they needed to be defended, in the right place at the right time, shut that play down like we knew it was coming. And to your point, Coach Cignetti, defensive Coach Haynes, Coach Mann, they do such a great job of preparation. There's film study that we are prepared, as well as all of these teams. Coach Ryan Day, obviously he's got incredible talent on his team, but he also prepares his team. And I feel like for the first time in a long time, we've got a coach and a coaching staff that prepares our team as well, if not better, for each and every situation that they might run into in the course of 4 quarters of a football game. And that's why that's why we are not only, we're in these games, but we believe that we can win these games, like the Oregon game. Unbelievable to the adversity that Fernando Mendoza faced when he threw that pick 6. What happens? Nothing. They don't blink. They come back and they go and they drive right down the field and get the game-winning touchdown. I mean, the Penn State game, we could go on and on about the adversity that they faced in that situation, down 4 points with less than 2 minutes to play. They get sacked, and then they don't blink. And that is absolutely preparation. It's coaching. And the other thing, in this era of college football, we have guys on our team that are from all over the country. They're from, it's been well documented how many of our guys are from Power 5 teams, or they were 2-star, 3-star, or 0 stars. But I think they've all come from winning programs. Wherever they've been, they've won at those smaller programs, and they've come, and Curt Cignetti obviously brought an incredible winning mentality. Aiden Fisher, who I think is going to go down as an all-time legendary Indiana Hoosier for what he's done in 2 short years, and the amount of respect, I feel like, the amount of respect he's given to Indiana football, where he's come in and he's come in, he's like, we wanted James Madison. I'm proud to be a Hoosier. I am now a Hoosier. We're going to win here. It's just, as a former player, many former players that we've talked to, it's just incredible to see a guy with that mental fortitude and that winning attitude to represent our university, our team, and leading them to this game tomorrow night. That's just going to be such an incredible experience for Hoosiers everywhere.
How closely, Chris Dittoe, my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line, Chris, as a former player, and obviously I know, from a business standpoint, I'm in your PR agency, you're very involved here within Indianapolis and Visible, but how much have you been around Curt Cignetti's program just in terms of, and I don't know, I know you go to games, but have you gone down to practices or just seen kind of the behind the scenes that the rest of us would not have privy to?
To be honest with you, it's very interesting. They don't open up much of anything. I've been to a few events, but as far as practices, those are closed, and it doesn't matter if you're a former player, former coach. They are very, it's just not happening. And at first I was a little frustrated because every other coach that we've had in the past, very welcome. And I'm not very welcoming. If you want to come to a practice, you just call the office and you can pretty much have free reign. But this is kind of the mystique of Coach Cignetti. I've never seen a practice. I know that none of my teammates have either. So to answer your question, no. And I would love to. I would love to be a fly on the wall and watch Coach Cignetti watch film, which from what I understand and talking with people, that's what he does. And that's what he does very, very well. And his ability to dissect and retain what he watches on film of opposing teams to create those game plans is something to behold. So unfortunately, I have met Coach Cignetti, and it was about a 5-minute conversation because he's all business. He's all football. He was friendly, but he's just on to the next thing. He's worried about how can we make this program better. There's no BS involved, which at first I was a little frustrated, to be honest with you, but we're 23-2. So let the man do whatever he wants to do.
What is the game plan for Chris Dittoe and like some of your former teammates tomorrow night?
Yeah, so we're talked about doing a doubleheader of going. We're not going to go to the basketball game. My head might explode. So we're going to get together about 4 downtown. Got a buddy who owns a business down there. So we're not going to try and go to the bars. I think that's just going to be an absolute madhouse of a scene. So we're going to go to a buddy who's got a business right across the street from Lucas Oil. We're going to tailgate there, kind of indoor and outdoor, watch the Alabama and Georgia game, and then probably go into the stadium around 7 and witness something that I think we all never thought we would, and that's Indiana in a Big Ten championship game. And while, it is kind of the appetizer, it's Christmas Eve, or it's something that we know we've got bigger and better things on the horizon. I still think tomorrow night is critical for us to compete, to stay in the game, to win the game, and I think we can, because winning a Big Ten championship would be, that would be an opportunity to go play in the Rose Bowl. We're talking about things that haven't happened since 1967. So tomorrow night is a huge game for us, even though we know there's a 3 or 4 game tournament that we will play in 2 weeks, January 1st, but it's going. I might shed a tear when I saw your tweet and I saw the picture with the name with Indiana in the end zone. It gives me chills thinking about it, and I know myself and all former players, and we're beyond excited to be able to witness this and for it to be in our backyard. And Indianapolis is also an absolute bonus. And the one person that I keep thinking of that I'm probably the most excited for, and I know many people are, is Don Fisher. And we all know the 50 years of football that he's witnessed. And for him, and Buck Stewart, his partner, he was our coach down there as well. I'm just so happy for him because I don't think there's anybody that's gone through more of Indiana football, the ups and downs. So I can't wait to hear his call because he's such a pro and he's a Indiana legend, as we all know. So I can't wait. I'm assuming you'll be at the game as well.
You know what? So here's the thing. I was going to go, and then at the I shouldn't say that. I was extended the opportunity from somebody that was going to get a suite, and then the prices just went bonkers. So they said, you know what? I'm not getting a suite after all. So I'm just going to go down and soak in the atmosphere. Instead of going to the game, we're going to go down. We're going to try to find a bar or restaurant downtown and just soak it in. I mean, it's going to be a madhouse, right? But there is part of me, Chris, that I want to be able to look. I want to see them win, and I want to see Indiana win as much as everybody we're talking about, as well as Terry Hepner and Bill Mallory and all of it, right? I want to see that as much as, but then there's part of me also that more so I just want to see Ohio State lose. I think that you know what I mean. That's a factor too. Yeah. But just the overall buzz and energy, I want to be able to soak in all of it because I just never thought we'd see it in terms of all the energy downtown. I love downtown Indy this time of year anyway, but so no, I'm not going to actually be in the stadium, but either way, it's going to be cool. You know what I mean?
That's great.
I mean,
I love it.
I never thought I'd see it, and I know I'm going to end with one other thing, and I wanted you to kind of piggyback up this. I don't know if you remember me asking you this, but I thought it was a telling comment. I asked you one of the times this year when we were talking if this is the first time in a long time that when you sit down on an airplane or when you're at a restaurant in Georgia on a business trip or whatever, and you say like, oh yeah, I was a college football player. Was there ever like a hesitation in saying for Indiana, as opposed to now the pride that it gives you, rightly so, to be able to say you're a part of Indiana football and just that overall, I guess, the push out of the chest that is now allowed for all of us, but notably for you, what does it mean for the football fraternity of Indiana University and the alumni?
Well, Jake, you're gonna make me tear up, honestly, because it means you just go back and you think about what all the work we put into it was immense. That every college football player, any college athlete puts into playing a sport in the Big Ten. There's a lot more losing than there is winning, especially what we experienced. But you still always had that hope at the beginning of every season that this is our year, and it never was. And now that it is our year, and it has been for the last couple, and to see the transformation of Memorial Stadium to 35,000 to now 55,000, it's just such a gratifying feeling of pride to watch it, and not only that, to watch a team that is so proud to represent Indiana football and to represent it in a way that they feel like we're here to stay, and this is something that can continue and last for the next 10, 20, 30 years because of the culture that they have built and all of these guys that have come in and they have never blinked. And all of these guys have, I feel like I've never felt before where guys on this team embrace players from every era, and they want us to be a part of it, even though we haven't necessarily been around the team. It feels like we are a part of this team. And so that's about as good as it gets for me, and I know for the rest of the guys that played there, to be able to say, hey, we're going to play Ohio State tomorrow night, and we feel like we have as good a chance to win as they do. What more can you ask for as a former player that we all put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that program, and now to watch a team that's actually getting it done, it keeps me up at night because I'm so excited. So tonight is going to be a long night, and I just can't wait for tomorrow.
Well, I can tell you at 3:48 in the morning, if you're staring at the ceiling and you can't sleep, just shoot me a text. I'm up. Yeah, we'll go drive around.
I will, man. I will.
All right, Chris, I appreciate it, man. Enjoy it and soak it all in, all right?
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully we're talking in a couple weeks and we're either in Pasadena or Miami or somewhere fun.
Well, there'll definitely be somewhere warm. There's no doubt about that. Chris Dittoe joining me, Java House, Peel, and Pour guest line. Tomorrow night, Indiana and Ohio State for the Big Ten title. Great call there, by the way, in terms of like when you start thinking about people that you want it for. And Don Fisher, absolutely. The number of games that he's called and you just think about all the trips back from, rainy, dreary late November games in December where Indiana just has, just been pounded down 5 scores in the third quarter, and you got to carry through that broadcast. Terry Huppner is one that, I remember when I was working at Channel 6, and I was I was basically the entry-level sports guy at Channel 6 at that time, but and then it got to the point, it was Dave First and I were working there. I remember one Saturday, and Terry Huppner had just taken the job. Ben Roethlisberger was either a rookie or in his second year with the Steelers and had played for Terry Huppner at Miami of Ohio. And Indiana got out to like a 2-0 start or whatever it might, as they typically Indiana would do that, right? They'd beat a smaller school or a D2 school or an 1AA, I guess I should say, school or whatever it might be, and get out to a 2-0 start, and then maybe beat a lower tier Division I school and maybe go 3-0. And you get kind of excited, and then kind of reality would kick in. But they had gotten out to a 2-0 or a 3-0, maybe a 1-0. I don't remember what it was, but none of us really knew Terry Huppner. And I'm working at Channel 6, and it was a Saturday, and back then we used to do Saturday Sports Extra and Sunday Sports Extra. We did a 40-minute this shows you how different television is now than it used to be. But we did a 40-minute sports show on Saturday and Sunday evening from 11:20 until 12 o'clock. And so Indiana had a game, and it's like 5:30, and we're like, okay, now we're slamming, putting together Sports Extra. And the phone rings in the Channel 6 sports office, and it's Terry Huppner. It's like, hey, guys, it's Coach Hepp. I'm going to drive up to Indy and go around to the TV stations. Didn't know if you wanted to do a quick interview. And we're like, are you kidding me? Of course. So, and he had gone, I think he'd been to 8, he'd been to 13 and 59, whatever, but he came in, and so we recorded like Dave did it, obviously, like a 15-minute sit-down talking about Roethlisberger and what he had envisioned for IU. And the guy, you would have thought that Dave and I had played for him. You would have thought that we were dating his daughter. He could not have been a nicer guy with a more clear vision of what he hoped for Indiana. And when he left, I remember thinking, that guy really, really likes us. Well, that was just the magic of who Terry Huppner was. I didn't know him at all, and he didn't know me. But he had this charm and charisma and belief and confidence about who he was and what he wanted to do. And I truly do, and I've always felt like the trajectory that Terry Huppner had Indiana going towards in the very brief time that he was able to put his fingerprints on Indiana football before he got ill and had the brain tumor. And then Bill Lynch took over, and Bill Lynch, who was also a great guy. But the groundwork that Terry Huppner had laid, the rock and the different things, which I kind of giggled at the time and found them gimmicky. But that belief, that confidence was similar also to what Curt Cignetti had when he came in. And Curt Cignetti gets all of the credit in the world. But when Dittoe brought up those names, those are the guys and the people that you think about and the people that you say, this is why it's so special. And I understand part of the rivalry of it, and rivalry is the wrong word, but part of the storyline of it is that Ohio State, understandably and rightly so, has every reason to snicker at it and go, yeah, Indiana's like the annoying little brother next door that suddenly finds himself at the big table and now they're trying to fling mashed potatoes. I get it. I totally get it. But I also think that Ohio State fans or anybody, Michigan fans, Minnesota, Purdue, whatever it might be, you just have to look at the history of this program and the quality of people that have waded through that and waited through that to get to this point to understand the weight of the moment. And that's why it is so special. And that's why today we say, you know what? We'll give it its due. We'll give it its time. But that's not to say the Colts don't have a big one lined up. Are we taking a road trip today, Eddie? Is that right?
We are indeed.
Where are we headed?
Down to Jacksonville.
And we're going there when?
Now.
Grab your peanuts or your little Biscoff cookie. We're going to take a flight down to Jacksonville. JP Shadrick joining us from the Jags next. Now, one of my complaints that I have, and this is how you know I'm getting older. I mentioned that the box scores at ESPN.com for basketball now, they're putting like the points column on the far left where it used to be like minutes and then points were on the far right. So you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, holy cow. Like Khalil Ware had 32 last night. And then you're like, oh no, that's minutes. And I've seen lately the way they do a schedule where it has the most recent at the top. Shouldn't it be that if the schedule is listed top to bottom, shouldn't the most recent be at the bottom? Like, shouldn't it go as you go downward?
Sorry, Jake, I wasn't paying attention. I was talking.
Well, that's a shock.
I was talking to JP.
Either way, I believe that it's confirmed that the Jaguars, no matter which way I'm looking at it, have won 3 in a row. And they kind of quietly, and I mean that as no disrespect to them, have put themselves right in the thick of this chase as Indianapolis is starting to backpedal a little bit. Big challenge for the Colts in a place that has been difficult for them this Sunday in Jacksonville. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pork guest line, he is a friend of the program. I thoroughly enjoyed, and I don't remember if we have had him on since this time. So, JP, if I am repeating myself with this, I apologize, but I thoroughly enjoyed at the end of the IndyCar season driving back from Nashville, listening to, I believe it was the Notre Dame-Miami game on the radio, and you were doing the national call, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That was week 1. It was like the last week of August.
Yeah.
And, it turned out to be a pretty good game. Miami got the field goal late. We'll see if it matters now when the playoff rankings come out next week. But, all the Miami people think that that should matter. And I kind of tend to agree with them. But I appreciate you listening, man. Thanks very much.
I literally, because I was driving from Nashville, I listened to the entire broadcast. Great call. It was a great game, to your point, right? No question about that. All right, let's get to this one coming up on Sunday. We know the Colts' standpoint from a health factor. Sauce Gardner is the one guy that did not practice this week. That will not change. What about Jacksonville in terms of their health? There are question marks, correct?
There's a handful. They've had some offensive line question marks the last few weeks. The left tackle, Walker Little, is in concussion protocol. So Cole Van Landen is likely slated to start there, and it would be his 4th different position starting on the offensive line this year. I think he'd be the 9th player in the last 20 years of the NFL to start at 4 different positions in one season, which is pretty remarkable to see. So there's some questions there. Defensive line as well. Trayvon Walker with a knee issue. He's been out on the practice field this week, though, and I think it's probably trending the right way for him. Eric Armstead with a hand injury has been practicing in a club. He nearly played last week, but last second just couldn't go. So those are some of the guys in the trenches. And then in the secondary, I think the Jags are expected to get Eric Murray back at safety, which will be big for them. Veteran guy who's been around for a long time and kind of settles things down on the back end.
Okay, Jags have won 4 of 5. Now, part of that, admittedly, and I mean this is no disrespect to them, part of it may be a schedule because you got the Raiders in there, you got the Cardinals and Titans. But playing close with Houston and then handling the Chargers, clearly this is a team that have started to figure some things out. What has been different in the last month for them?
Yeah, I mean, they're figuring out a way to finish some close ball games, right? They didn't do that last year. New regime and everything this year, clearly. The Houston game was a debacle. I mean, they were up by 3 scores in the 4th quarter and blew the game. I mean, they just didn't finish the game. So I think that woke them up a little bit and said, hey, guys, we cannot have that kind of performance in the 4th quarter, especially against a backup quarterback for Houston. Stroud wasn't out there. So they come back after the next week and take the Chargers out, and that was their best complete game of the season. And now they've had some closer ones. But I don't even look at, the Cardinals game or the Raiders game as, I mean, those are really tight games, but you still got to go find a way to win them. And they may not be, an elite team yet, but they're finding ways to win. And that's what comes out of these games. And they're playing really well against the run on defense. That's number one. They want to be physical on the offensive line and run the ball. They didn't do it last week against Tennessee, but they didn't have to because Tennessee stinks. So they're finding ways to win, and they're in first place.
Okay, so Trevor Lawrence, we've talked so much about this, I know, right? And when I look at Trevor Lawrence each time that I start to think he's got it figured out, then all of a sudden there's like a slight regression there. So, JP, my question is, in the passing game, Brian Thomas Jr. is a pretty special talent. Are they going long-form passing game, or is Trevor Lawrence becoming more of a short yardage, I hate to use the term dink and dunk type quarterback?
Well, I mean, let's begin a few weeks ago when, he was really having some issues down the field or letting it fly or hesitant or whatever. He was hanging on to it or dumping it down to the running back. And he had a conversation with Liam Cohen, and the coach shared it with the media. It was like, hey, we just let it rip. Like, we don't mind if you get an extra interception or so a game. We don't want it. But, hey, if you complete 3 more down the field than you are right now, okay, we'll take one. You're being aggressive. Somebody makes a play on it on the back end. Just let it loose, man. Let it fly. Like, that's the way you play the best when you're free and don't have to worry about anything. Take, for example, the playoff game a couple of years ago against the Chargers. They get thrown 4 picks in the first half. There's nothing to lose then, so he's just letting it rip down the field, and they find their way back into the game and win the thing. So that is kind of changed, I think, his mentality the last couple weeks, where he's been pretty comfortable in the pocket, especially against Tennessee last week, and made some pretty strong throws downfield. But you're going to have some misses, and there's going to be some picks. It is the full Trevor Lawrence experience. This is what it is. We know this. But you got to be able to live with it and have all the other parts of your team do their job as well, defense and some special team scores like they've had.
Is there still more there for him? I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence in terms of who he can become, or are we at the point now in a guy's career where, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but where you have a pretty good idea he is who he is?
I think there's still a little more to come just because it is the back end of his first season in this scheme. He seems to have it down pretty well. And, the middle of the season, they were trying to figure out how to streamline the pre-snap process because these play calls are pretty long and they're in depth. And if you miss something, then you got to re-say the whole thing again in the huddle. And they were getting to the line late, and that was causing panic and pre-snap motion penalty. All these things were going on. So since then, he's gone to a wristband, which has helped streamline the pre-snap process, which I think calms his mind a little bit. And credit him for asking for it, and credit the staff for not, for budging and allowing him to do it. A lot of staffs would be like, what are you talking about? Like, learn the offense. But this is to help him and his process pre-snap. And I think that helps him moving ahead once the snap is there, once you're over the ball. I think that would help them moving ahead. So there's more out there. We'll see what happens if Brian Thomas can catch the football down the stretch. That would help. And he's been out for a couple of weeks with an ankle injury, came back last week. They need that deep threat down the field. They haven't really had that consistently this season because they got everything else. As you talked about, all the underneath stuff is there, Jacoby Myers and the tight end Strange. But to have something over the top would be a huge, huge boon for this team.
JP, are you a married fella?
No. Why?
Okay. Well, because I was going to use the analogy or set the scene of like you wake up in the morning and your wife says, you look tired, da da da. So let's just say you go to work and somebody's like, dude, you look tired. And you say, you know what? I am, because I was up all night trying to figure out the one area for the Jags that I just can't get a hold on who they are and what they are. What has been the most consistent thing of that storyline that it would be for you over the course of this year?
Yeah, somebody tells me I'm tired, I just tell them that I'm sick and tired of their crap. Just leave me alone, will you? Like, mind your own business, will you? No.
Like me right there. Matter of fact, we're going to do this again. I'm going to ask if you're a married fella, and I want you to answer it exactly like that. JP, you a married fella?
Yeah, mind your own business. How about that? No,
perfect.
I think I know what you mean. This is, what's their identity, right? Like, what are they?
Correct.
Who
or
these
what's
guys?
the area where they're not and you feel they should be?
Yeah, I think the defense has really started to show that they are a really good run-stuffing defense. We'll find out on Sunday, clearly, against Jonathan Taylor. They have not allowed a rusher this year to run for 70 or more yards in a game, a single running back on them. So
that doesn't happen too often in full seasons. They got a few games to go if they can kind of make some history, but this is a tough test this week. But they feel like they're stout there, and they're a pretty good takeaway team early in the season. They've got to get back to that on defense. On offense, it's a great question. I think they want to be the physical group that runs the ball first and then throws off that in short down and distance on second and third. That's their old goal. It's not, putting 4 wide and throwing it all over the yard. We've seen that with Trevor Lawrence. I don't think you want him throwing it 45 times a game. 28's fine, and run the ball, and that's what they're best at, I think, right now. And what they're not best at is spreading it out and throwing it around. Like if they're down in a game, it's going to be tough because there is some inconsistency in the passing game, and they've had some drops this year, and that's just kind of what it is here.
Okay, lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because I know that you obviously, as I mentioned off the top, you got some knowledge of college football as well. I'm going to give you 2 games. I want you to quickly handicap it and give me your prediction. Georgia, Alabama.
Well, Alabama cannot run. They did actually run one of their higher marks last week in Auburn, but it's not consistent this season. If they get in the head of the quarterback, I think Kirby Smart and that defense will have a chance to do that for the second time. They didn't do it last time in the regular season. I think Georgia gets this football game.
Okay, Indiana, Ohio State.
Ohio State's good. Quarterback's good. Wide receivers really good. The defensive back is fantastic. They've got pieces and parts, and they know how to win games like this. And Indiana has not been here yet, so this is their first time really in the dance like this. I think Ohio State wins just because of that experience. But I think it's a closer game than a lot of people might think. Yeah.
I'd ask you BYU, Texas Tech, but then you'll tell me to mind my own business, right?
That's a good point. Who watches that? Come on.
There is some truth to that, right? You kind of feel bad. I mean, Texas Tech is apparently really good. Dude, I'll be honest with you, I've seen none of them this year, right? It's kind of true with BYU as well.
I actually had BYU on the other night just for the first time, and Texas Tech, same thing. Either I'm doing a game and busy and they're not on, or what, So I've missed them, so I have no comment on that game.
Mind your own business, right?
Yeah, right.
All right, JP, I appreciate it. What's the weather going to be down there? I'd assume typical, 65,
baby.
Good?
Oh, it's going to rain. I think there's rain in the forecast, so and 100% chance of rain, and most of the day.
Really?
So, yes. But temperatures will be in probably mid-60s, but it's supposed to be wet. So the Jags have been working with a wet ball all week long, and we'll see if what kind of offense each side can have in the swamp here. We'll see what happens, but I think there's going to be a lot of rain.
All right, always a pleasure, man. We'll talk to you probably after the holidays because, of course, Jacksonville comes back up here right after Christmas, and look forward to talking to you again.
And single ladies of Indianapolis, please reach out. That's great, will you?
You will not tell them to mind their own business.
No, you're always welcome.
That's right. JP, appreciate it, man. Be good.
See you guys. Thanks.
That's our buddy from Jaguars.com, by the way, JP Shadrick down in Jacksonville. Really, really good dude, obviously. Goes without saying. And that's interesting about the fact it's going to rain. One of the factors that we will look into that, we will talk and get an idea, better idea in terms of the health standpoint, the last piece of that, if you will, from Kevin, because Kevin Bowen going to join us just about 12 minutes from now. It was last weekend, I thought, for a late November. Was it last weekend or 2 weeks ago? When I looked at the slate of college football games, and I'm like, man, for November, this is like a really weak week. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Everybody was stepping out of conference. It was just like, there are no good games.
Yeah. It's Thanksgiving break. No students would be in attendance.
Yeah. I mean, BYU, again, it's obviously a championship day tomorrow, and it goes without saying. Alabama, Georgia will be fabulous. Ohio State, Indiana is going to be great. Texas Tech and BYU may be a really good game. I feel bad because they're up against Alabama, Georgia. Now, NFL slate of games, Eddie.
I'll be interested, Jake, to see if Notre Dame fans are more tuned into that game that you just mentioned, the Big East game, because it's got more implications for them than the Alabama-Georgia game, in my opinion. Because as we highlighted on, was that Wednesday? Because rankings were Tuesday.
BYU Texas Tech is Big 12, right?
That's what I meant, yeah. BYU Texas Tech, yeah. Because if BYU wins, that would, theoretically bump Notre Dame out of the field. Because they would now jump Notre Dame and get into the CFP.
I get it. It is so hard to think of Notre Dame not being in. But let me give you our jailhouse game, okay? For the NFL. Now, for those new to the program,
where have you been?
Thank you, Eddie.
But we thank you for being a part of it now. See, you like how I've adapted and added that in so we're welcoming and not just ridiculing?
Hospitality.
That's right. Yeah.
So, if you are new to the program, we call it the jailhouse game. That means if you were like a prison in, give me a state that does not have a professional sports team that's just kind of a state you hardly ever talk about.
Idaho.
So if you are in the Idaho State Prison of Pocatello, and they're like, good news, guys, Sunday, everybody was on their good behavior, we're going to let you watch an NFL game. What's the game that everybody's excited, and then they go in and they're like, oh, they gave us this game because it's not airing anywhere else. Nobody else cares. Which of these is the jailhouse game? You ready?
I know I already got my answer locked in.
But see, automatically you say to yourself anything involving Tennessee or New Orleans because they're terrible, right?
It's not that.
Okay. Seattle at Atlanta. Let me give you all the games, and then you tell me the one that is just the matchup.
Yeah.
Seattle at Atlanta, Cincinnati at Buffalo, Tennessee at Cleveland. That is a high contender. Washington at Minnesota, Miami at the Jets, New Orleans at Tampa, the Colts at Jags, Pittsburgh at Baltimore, Denver at the Raiders, Chicago at Green Bay, Rams at Cardinals, Texans at Chiefs, Eagles at Chargers. I'm going to guess, Eddie, that you are under the belief that the jailhouse game, it's one of two. If you don't believe that you're saying it doesn't involve Tennessee or New Orleans, correct?
Well, I can go that route.
But you had a different one in mind, correct?
That's not one of those, yeah.
Okay.
But I think the easy one there that you mentioned is the high contender. Cleveland and Tennessee.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that you are going with Miami and the Jets.
That'd be correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to argue. The other one that is two teams that just are kind of mystifying is Washington at Minnesota. Because I still think Washington is decent, but they're not. They're terrible. And I know that Jaden Daniels has been hurt. And
he's back.
But I know. But, I mean, like, it's just they can't get anything going. And then Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota, come on, man.
Yeah, come on, 9.
J.J. McCarthy, this is a franchise that let, in the last 2 years, 3 years, bypassed, and I'm not saying any of these guys are the next Joe Montana, but between Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, and Daniel Jones, you had all of them in-house and went with J.J. McCarthy.
They look pretty smart on letting Kirk Cousins go.
Agreed.
Which was easy after the Achilles tear, yeah.
Except for the J.J. McCarthy. I mean, listen, I've got Justin Jefferson on my fantasy team. I say that not because anybody cares about your fantasy team, but because he is an elite talent and has done nothing this year because he has no one throwing. Uncle Rico's throwing him the ball.
You know, the Indiana and Ohio State of the Crane Company Fantasy League are meeting right now, and Ohio State got 3 touchdowns from Jahmyr Gibbs last night.
Do you have Jahmyr Gibbs?
I know. I'm Indiana in this. I'm Indiana in this scenario.
Okay.
I got 24 or whatever it was from, my kicker.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Kevin Bowen going to join us a couple minutes. I led off the show by saying this. I love everything about this city, this state, the people of it, and the events that we have. And nobody puts on big events better than Indianapolis. Nobody. And I've seen that evolution that I've talked about of it. I mean, I've seen, I remember when the Indianapolis 500 was the signature event of this town. It still is, obviously. And the largest single-day spectator sport in the world. But there was a time where, as Kurt Vonnegut once said, the city of Indianapolis was the Indianapolis 500 one day of the year and miniature golf the other 364. But then we began to flex our muscles a little bit. The 1980 Final Four, the 82 National Sports Festival, the 87 Pan Am Games. And every team in this market, virtually every team at some point has had their turn at the plate, their seat at the table. The Colts were in relative anonymity, and then all of a sudden they break through in the mid-'90s with the Let Her Rip team and then into Peyton Manning, and you know what happens from there. They ultimately win and bring a Lombardi back to Indianapolis, and the city of Indianapolis hosts a Super Bowl. The Pacers, same thing. Relative anonymity once transferring into the NBA, and then Hicks versus Knicks and onward, and most recently a half away from an NBA title. Indiana basketball goes without saying. 3 titles under Bob Knight, Branch McCracken before that, and one of the signature programs of this state. Indiana soccer as well. Women's basketball now has put themselves in position, Elite Eight performances. Purdue football. I've seen Drew Brees take his team to the Rose Bowl. I've seen Mark Herman be the most valuable player of 3 different bowl games in 3 consecutive years. I know about what Jim Everett and some of the different, the cradle of quarterbacks of Purdue football. Purdue basketball, when they went to the national championship game with Zach Edey, we spent a show celebrating and letting Purdue fans push out their chest. Notre Dame football, even though not in the market, it's within the state, and an elite top-level program for football with national championship contention, Heisman Trophy winners galore. Butler has been to a Final Four right here in Indianapolis, and we've become accustomed to hosting the Final Four in Indianapolis. And Gordon Hayward and the shot that nearly made it, and the Cinderella story, and Brad Stevens, and all of it. Purdue basketball wins a national championship. Damon Bailey has the Indiana high school basketball tournament getting moved to the RCA Dome, and ESPN picks it up. Everything in this town, in this market, at some point has had their turn in the spotlight. The dancing spotlights across the skies of Indianapolis have at some point epicentered on nearly every team except for Indiana football, which going into this season still held the record for most losses in Division I. And they had moments. I talked about Terry Hepner and his vision and his belief and the tragedy that took place there. Bill Mallory was a darn good football coach, and they went into Michigan State and had a chance to win a Big Ten title, and Pete Stoyanovich hits a field goal, and then Michigan State goes nuts and wins the game and goes on. Indiana had their moments, their fleeting moments, but we all knew deep down it was Indiana football. And now it is the time for you IU fans to push out your chest, collectively come together, enjoy the game with Louisville in basketball, which whoever would have thought it was the precursor, the appetizer towards the Indiana football program taking on Ohio State 1-2, Big Ten title on the line, in a game which is essentially meaningless, except for that it's not. And I understand for Ohio State fans why they can snicker at Indiana for getting excited just to see their name in the end zone, but it's what it represents, because for so many people that have watched so many teams and so many franchises and so many moments in the history of this market, the one thing they never thought they would see is Indiana football in the national spotlight, and here it is. And I say, soak it all in. Soak it all in. Why not Indiana? Let's go. The Colts are obviously in action today as well, or this weekend as well, and they are at a spot that has been a nightmare for them in Jacksonville. And the Jags putting it together a little bit here. Kevin Bowen joining me now, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He has been out at the Colts complex over the majority of the week for each and every session the Colts have had. So, Kevin, we'll begin with this. From a health standpoint, other than Sauce Gardner, which is a big one, I realize, it looks like things are starting to show to the right direction health-wise for the Colts. Agree?
Yeah, obviously you have the guys on injured reserve. So those would be DeForest Buckner and Ashton Doolin. But yeah, everybody else is healthy. 52 out of 53 guys, good to go. Obviously the one is Sauce Gardner, like you said. So yeah, looked to be really, really healthy. Could get Jalen Carlisle back potentially. He was a starter for this team at linebacker for a chunk of last season. I think was viewed as supposed to be a starter this year. He could make his debut coming up on Sunday. So yeah, I'd say, all in all, fairly healthy. Obviously missing some key guys. Jacksonville likely missing some key guys as well, but still, for early December, pretty good bill of health.
Where would you assess their quality of play and depth, I guess? I mean, it's not like Sauce Gardner is some staple for them, right? But we know that the level of talent there. Without him there and Mooney Ward still trying to kind of find his way through coming off of the games that he missed due to the concussion, where do you assess or put them at the defensive backfield, notably if they would have to go, let's say, into a spot, a reserve role and get some depth?
Yeah, I think it's a question that has a few more concerns than maybe it did a couple of months ago. Yeah, I thought early in the year, Travarius Ward was really, really good, looked like a number one outside corner. And, since the bye week, and, he has admitted this or did earlier in the week, he's just not playing at his normal self. And I know you've touched on it, and we've touched on it. This man has dealt with a ton off the field over the last, year plus, with just the beyond tragic loss of his young daughter, and then suffered, a really serious concussion, the second of two concussions he's had this year. And, in the two games since his return, he frankly looks a step slow. So, again, where is he at for Sunday? And then, Kenny Moore II, I think he's a great, great NFL story. I think he has been so darn solid, probably one of the most solid Colts players in the entire Chris Ballard tenure. And I just feel like lately it maybe hasn't been as normal Kenny sticky, if you will, as we're used to from him. I don't think it's egregious by any means, and he plays a position where oftentimes if you see a little bit of slippage, it gets noticed easily than other positions. So, that would be where my questions lie. Just, okay, do you have two guys that have Pro Bowl, All-Pro pass? Can they get back to that level without Sauce probably for another couple games?
Kevin, one of the things, and you tell me if I know this will stun you, overthinking this, right? With all of the conversation that we've had, understandably so, about Daniel Jones and the leg injury, or Sauce Gardner for that matter, and the calf strain, and the other things that are going on. Alec Pierce, you had a really good column about Alec Pierce now emerging as basically their top wide receiver, and we know he's in a contract year. Am I hallucinating here? Entirely possible. Or have we seen a little bit of a downtick or regression on the right side of the offensive line?
No, I think I think that's a fair statement to make. When you look at this season as a whole, I feel like from an offensive line standpoint, I think the unit's been pretty good. But I do think that right side, if you're going to kind of group the five out and obviously pick a side, yeah, I would say maybe that's not at the level that you would like. Now, again, having said this, and it's kind of wild to think that, the Colts didn't allow a sack last week to that vaunted defensive line, the same defensive line that sacked Josh Allen 8 times. They've won the turnover margin each of the last 2 weeks, and hobbled Daniel Jones has been sacked 1 time, and yet they lost both games. It's just weird. It doesn't really add up. I mean, usually turnover margin is the number one indicator of a win or a loss, and then when you think, hey, well, they won the turnover margin, but, whatever, they were sacked 6 times like they were in Pittsburgh, or Atlanta, that can be a big indicator of, do you actually win the game or not? Well, again, negative play-wise, they haven't really dealt with many sacks, so it probably goes to show you the offense has had some definite issues when you factor all of that in and just the inability to move the football and really finish off drives anywhere near the rate they were earlier in the season. But, yeah, I mean, O-line-wise, I think you could say the right side, but, I don't think, maybe in the run game, honestly, not getting it as going as much as they were earlier in the year, you could probably say that, but I think pass protection, it's honestly been okay considering Jones's lack of mobility.
When you look at the lack of mobility, Kevin Bowen, my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line, the Daniel Jones in the mobility thing now, Kevin, because and you could see it, right? I mean, you could see against Kansas City. It's like, man, he was pulling in the reins when normally he would be able to extend a play by a yard or two or a moment or two or whatever it may be, right? And maybe it's power of suggestion, but it looked like he just was so much more quickly aborting plays against Houston. Can they come up with, or can Shane Steichen come up with, or has he discussed different sort of plays they can wrinkle in schematically to take the heat off of his reliance on having to extend plays?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are seeing, maybe Jones a little bit more quick rhythm with some of his progressions. Now, I do think there's a line in that. Sometimes you're just forcing it into the first or the second read, and maybe if you trusted yourself a little bit more, you could get to that third or fourth read, which could open it up. I get you're playing with a little fire at that point. I did think, for what it's worth, Jones was moving a little bit better this week at practice than he was last week. I think there is some hope, from the Colts that, maybe here in a couple of weeks he could get back to, being his self. Because, when you look at it, the Colts have lost 3 of 4. The one win in that stretch, you could certainly make the argument a major, major reason, maybe the top reason outside of Jonathan Taylor, that the Colts beat the Falcons in Germany was Daniel Jones' ability to extend plays. I mean, he had some huge scrambles in the game. Obviously, we all, I think, remember the overtime scramble that set up the 4th and 2 to Tyler Warren. But, even before that, I thought he had some other, kind of big plays in that game that he made with his legs. So I am curious, like, if and when do we start to see a little more of that, the bootleg stuff, even the QB sneak stuff. I mean, the 3rd and 1 to Tyler Warren, and I'm fine. A lot of people thought it was way too cute and everything. I think in today's NFL, and, you saw Tyler Warren do that at Penn State. I didn't have too big of an issue with him trying to sneak it. But, Daniel Jones has pretty much been automatic in the QB sneak this season. And I think a big reason why, they didn't sneak with him was because of his health. So, again, when do you get back to that from him? Or, when do you feel comfortable with that? So I think those are all things that, maybe we don't see all of it on Sunday, but can you get back there at some point here in December?
Now, Kevin, I know that you obviously grew up from a basketball standpoint. Your brother made you a Notre Dame basketball fan, right? But you went to IU, okay? During the time, what year did you enter IU? I can't recall.
2008, and I graduated in the 12. 3 Big Ten wins.
Okay. So were you at IU during the time that Bob Knight was coaching in Texas Tech?
Yeah, definitely, right? 2008. I mean, how long was Knight there? Knight was there from, 01 to...
Right around then, I would think.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I could be wrong, but
I'd say definitely. I don't know. Maybe it was Pat. Honestly,
but did you pay attention to Texas Tech in any way, shape, or form during that time for that reason?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I brought up on today's show today that I might have to say the old Bob Knight red sweater comment and watching Texas Tech football tomorrow because Notre Dame.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Tech.
Are you carrying on your fandom for Texas Tech? Because you need, Eddie points this out, and I personally think that Notre Dame is in. They are one of the 12 best teams in college football. I think they might be one of the 8 best teams in college football. But by resume, they might need some help here, and that help would be Texas Tech needs to go ahead and get pesky BYU to push them out the door and turn the lock key on them, right? So how big a Texas Tech fan are you?
Yeah, I need to know the fight song. I need to, or do we have a hand signal that we do? What do we do here?
Guns up. They got the guns up thing,
right? Okay, guns up.
Yeah.
I remember the Texas Tech bell ringer. I'm always nervous when I see that video, though, pop up on the internet there. So guns up. Okay, I got it. My wife is a big Mormon Wives watcher, the television show.
Well, you better hope she's watching some Disappointed Wives, right?
Yeah, I was going to say we need these wives, crying for other reasons than their marital status, or So we don't need to get into any more than that. But yes, they need that. Now, you bring up an interesting point. You just said they're one of the best 12 teams, maybe one of the best 8 teams. I believe right now, from a Vegas odds standpoint, they have the 4th best odds to win the national championship. Ohio State is the favorite. Indiana's close. Then I think there's a little drop. I believe Georgia's slightly above Notre Dame. Do you think that should matter at all? Do you think the committee should look at that, or is that no?
No, because I do think that, and it is Kevin. It's hard to remember this, but the reality is this: money lines and book lines are moved by where the money is going, and that speaks to Notre Dame's simply their fanfare, right, and the amount of money that would be going on them, right?
So not to do with Notre Dame is capable of beating those teams. It's more to do with rich people like to bet on Notre Dame.
What I'm saying is, it's just like the money line, hey, so and so is favored by 12, and then by the time the game kicks off, it's like, wow, they're now only favored by 3. Well, it's not because they got better; it's because the money was going in a certain direction, and that changes the line and the odds that are placed on it, right? So yeah. I get it. I mean, look, and I do think that there is an element of, for example, is Notre Dame better than Texas Tech? I have no idea, because to be honest with you, I haven't seen really any of Texas Tech, but it feels to me like they are, because part of it is just you hear about and you see more here, obviously, about the Irish, and I like Marcus Freeman and all that, but I do think that branding and precedent comes into play a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously last year Alabama was the first team left out, so that was kind of a shot at the old, hey, they're never going to leave Alabama out, they're never going to leave Notre Dame out, because that improves TV ratings and all of that. One thing with the committee that I do like, and I think it's been debated from an NCAA selection committee for the men's basketball tournament, is you do have 4 former college football coaches on the selection committee. It's not just all ADs. So my thought is these former coaches are not necessarily, crunching computer numbers or looking at strength of schedule here. And who doesn't? Now, again, part of me thinks that would help out Notre Dame based off what you've said and based off how I think many people view them. But, clearly with these recent rankings, that's not how the committee's currently talking about them.
Kevin, I'm going to introduce for you, by the way, this is I have a rotation of songs that I consider to be my favorite songs. You know what I mean? There's like 5 or 6 of them that comes on. I'm like, man, that's such a great song. We have now for Kevin Bowen, this is your favorite song for the weekend. Here we go. Not a bad sound and fight song, right?
All forever, go Red Raiders.
That's right.
We love Lubbock, yes we do. Bob Knight, Cliff Kingsbury, Patrick Mahomes, the Raven Clark, Texas Tech, it is. Red Raiders, fight, 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 fight. Screw BYU.
Yes, there you go. And that's the exact lyrics. How did you know that? That's a quick Google search there, by the way. Lubbock, the hometown, also of Buddy Holly, by the way, if you wanted to throw him into that mix. Okay, Indiana, Ohio State. You look at it how?
I like IU, in all honesty. I think Ohio State just played their game of the year, and I just don't think this game I think sure, they care about it, of course, but, it's a lot to rev it back up. Indiana has really been plugged for this game since, Oregon? I think that will help. I think the fact that they'll get Surratt back, potentially Drew Evans up front, they've been a little banged up, really over the last couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be, I know we get in this kind of crowd debate a lot with these neutral site games. I think there will be more Indiana fans there, and I think they will make their presence felt. And for Ohio State, it's just another Big Ten, championship, and I get they haven't won in a while, but I just think, frankly, it matters more to Indiana. So. I'll go Indiana in a close one.
Okay, lastly, Kevin, your son has made his pick, yes or no?
Yes, made his pick. Yep. We posted it last night.
Okay, and, I'm not a fan of the Jags helmets.
I'm not a fan of Kevin sending Max out in the snow in shorts.
I saw that. I did see out in the cold, yep. That's questionable
not
decision.
One of my finer moments. Luckily, CPS has not called me.
Your wife was too busy watching the Mormon Housewives, I guess, right?
Exactly. So he did go Colts again, which I don't know. I'm starting to think he gets a little biased. I did take off a Seahawks helmet last night. I'm curious if that eye will attract him at all next week.
Is it the Seahawks helmet with the blue face mask?
No, it's the eye. It's the it's the long eye. It kind of takes up pretty much all the helmet.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, he hasn't seen a lot of that. The NFC helmets. He doesn't get. Those are the PG-13.
You know what?
Movies.
And he's got the Niners helmets after that too, and that's also a pretty intriguing helmet. We shall see what happens.
Does he put them on his dinosaurs and then they clash head to head?
Yeah, he did that last week, and I mean, last week I thought he might go Texans there, and he should have if he was trying to make some money there. So 7-5 on the year, teetering, just like the Colts. Very fitting.
All right, we shall see what happens over the course of the weekend. I know you guys will be talking about it first thing Monday morning on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin as well as James Boyd and Jeff Rickard. Enjoy the weekend, all right, Kevin?
Thank you, Jake.
Kevin Bowen joining us on the program. Outstanding rendition of the Texas Tech fight song. Before we get to, and it is a Friday, it's a Franciscan feel-good, good for the heart Friday, and a really important discussion I want to get to you folks about in terms of getting set for the holidays and your heart health. But speaking of hearts, I wanted to point this out before we move along today. Some heavy ones around this building and around this community. Certainly there should be for any of you when it comes to those that were under the quest to and the desire to be informed of what was happening within the government, certainly of this city and this state for nearly 3 decades. Back in 2007, I had the pleasure, albeit not for very long, but I did have the pleasure of being a member of the WIBC morning news program and working for WIBC, which was a real thrill for me. And it was notably a thrill for me because, and I got to work with Jeff Pigeon and Terry Stacy and Big John Gillis, legendary people who ascended within the broadcast industry far beyond what I at that point had been to or ever still to this day will be. And I have always felt, personally speaking, selfishly speaking, that having WIBC, even though I'm probably the only one that remembers that time on my resume, having that on my resume gave me a validity, at least personally speaking, because I knew of what that radio station and the heritage of the WIBC morning program meant in this town. And certainly the news department of that, going way back to even before that time, it goes without saying. WIBC News and the long heritage there of the individuals that made that the staple of, Radio Indiana and everything that it's been in this town. One of the people who worked there for 28 years, diligently and passionately, and was a great teammate, even for the small amount of time that I worked with him, was Eric Berman. Eric Berman was probably the smartest man in broadcasting. He was, and I always loved this about him, a trivia buff who had been a champion on Jeopardy, literally. Everybody says, you should go on Jeopardy. Not to me, I'm saying in general, that euphemism. You should go on Jeopardy. He did, and he won. And Eric had a very pleasant demeanor about him. It would be disingenuous for me to say that I knew him to the level or the depth that colleagues did, because I didn't work with him for an extended period of time. However, during the time that I did that morning program, I was miscast for certain. I knew it. I think everyone else knew it. But Eric Berman was one of them. I remember pulling me aside and talking to me just about the show itself and the direction and the way that I handled things from a broadcast standpoint. And he did so with a qualification of expertise and understanding of the craft, while at the same time a compassion about the importance of the craft, but also the humanity of being a person on the radio and kind of navigating through that for me, or offering his advice in the most tender and kind-hearted of ways. And this was someone who had an intellect that was far, far, far beyond anything that I could even comprehend. He took a true passion in covering the State House and making sure that Hoosiers were informed of the issues going on around them from a political standpoint. And he did so with the professionalism of an objectivity where you knew that when he reported something, it was true and it was fair. And those are the two things that not only are the ultimate testament to this craft, but also, to a great extent, an art that has faded to a great extent. Eric worked for WIBC for 28 years. He left WIBC and then went into other ventures in covering the State House. But some over a decade ago or so, he had a battle with cancer, which had gone into remission. And today, just before I got on the air, Dan McGowan, who had been the producer on that morning show that I was on, sent me the text that unfortunately he had gotten the news this morning that Eric Berman has passed away. And Eric Berman, when I think of him, I will always think of this pleasant grin that he had on his face when he was so always happy to answer a trivia question or provide one, but it was never a grin that cracked into an arrogance, but rather one that simply stayed at the level of an appreciation and an enjoyment. And he is someone that certainly, from an information standpoint, will be missed greatly within this area. I think the listeners and the people, and for that matter, the political figures of this state owe him a tremendous amount in terms of gratitude. And for my colleagues within this building, they will miss him, I know, a great deal, but all of us will be fortunate to be able to say that our professional paths did cross with Eric Berman. So Godspeed to him after the news that he passed away this morning. We'll come back. It is a Franciscan Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, and we'll do it next. It is a Friday. It is the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour. You know what that means. It means it is time for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, as we do each and every Friday. And I know everybody's feeling good this time of year because, as we've been talking about all day, it's going to be a huge weekend. Colts, Jags on Sunday, Indiana, Ohio State tomorrow. That's not for the faint of heart. It goes without saying. But, of course, the holiday season is upon us as well, and that becomes something where you have holiday heart syndrome. This is something that is relatively new to me. I was unaware of it, so I thought, why not bring on one of our experts from Franciscan to talk about exactly that. So joining me now on the guest line, he is a cardio-electrophysiologist with Franciscan Health. Dr. Phil George joining me on the program today. Doctor, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I want to begin with this because, Doc, I know this is going to be surprising to you. I'm not what one would say is necessarily like medically the smartest, the sharpest tool in the shed. My understanding is when it comes to cardiology, you got two kinds of heart doctors. You've got the heart doctor that basically does the plumbing, makes sure that everything is cleaned in that regard, and then you have the one that is the electrician to make sure that everything is beating at the pace it needs to. You are the latter, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm one of the electricians, if you will.
Oh. Okay, so we're making sure the wiring is all good here for everybody. I want to talk about this with the holiday season. I heard the other day, and that's why I reached out to Franciscan, and you guys are so good at explaining different and making people aware of different heart things, like we're going to do on Sunday, by the way, from 12 until 2 o'clock for our Franciscan Movember Health Fair for men at Gugman House Brewing. Hope everybody's going to be there for that. But holiday heart syndrome, doctor, what can you tell me about this term that is new to me?
Yeah, so classically, holiday heart syndrome really just refers to the development of abnormal heart rhythms that oftentimes occur during the holidays and that are associated with essentially increased alcohol intake. And the rhythm that we're usually referring to as far as abnormal is what we call atrial fibrillation. And so with the holidays coming up, right, people have parties and events planned, right? People want to enjoy themselves. They're going to have a couple of drinks, and maybe they drink a little bit more than they're used to drinking. And that's oftentimes what patients can develop some of these abnormal heart rhythms, specifically what we call atrial fibrillation. And atrial fibrillation, we don't consider it an imminently dangerous or life-threatening rhythm disturbance, but it is an abnormal heart rhythm. It can cause symptoms and, if untreated, can sometimes lead to the development of strokes in individuals, particularly over an individual's lifetime. That particular rhythm increases that individual's risk of stroke.
I want to get back to the relation between, I think we all know, doctor, clearly most people know that when you start talking about alcohol consumption, moderation is key, probably none is key, but for those that are going to be consuming an alcoholic beverage, I am curious the relationship between, I know that alcohol is a depressant and that it can slow things down a little bit. What is the direct correlation, if you will, to how it can impact the pacing or exactly what you're talking about, the electricity, if you will, of the heart?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And sort of the way that I try to explain it to patients that I see in my clinic is that you can think of it as sort of like a low-level withdrawal, particularly for individuals that sort of like binge drink, again, during the holidays. And alcohol, like you said, it is essentially a depressant, and it because of its impact on sort of neurotransmitters, adrenaline levels in the body, and oxidative stress, it can increase the risk of these rhythm disturbances, particularly after patients have stopped drinking, because of this sort of like low-level withdrawal is a way that I can sort of describe it.
Well, with that, Dr. Philip George is my guest, by the way, from Franciscan Health. We're talking about holiday heart syndrome and that withdrawal, if you will, after one has gone through a night of drinking or binge drinking, to your point, especially if it's somebody who's not used to that. You have your normal symptoms of the quote-unquote hangover, right? And so somebody's just kind of feeling nauseous or whatever it may be the next day. What warning signs are there or symptoms that, in fact, holiday heart syndrome may be in effect that somebody should look out for?
Yeah, so as it relates to atrial fibrillation, probably the most sort of sensitive indicator is that sensation of what we call palpitations, or the subjective feeling of actually sensing your heart beating. Most of the time, over the course of a regular day, most individuals are not going to feel their heart beating. But if patients go into abnormal heart rhythms, sometimes they can sense their heart beating erratically. And that's probably the most sensitive indicator that a patient may have gone into atrial fibrillation as a result of holiday heart. But patients can have other symptoms associated with it that are probably less specific. So if a patient has, or if a person, I should say, has symptoms of fatigue or breathlessness, that can sometimes be associated with this as well. But there are also a handful of folks that'll go into atrial fibrillation and not have any symptoms whatsoever. So there's going to be a spectrum of individuals that are going to be very symptomatic, minimally symptomatic, and have no symptoms whatsoever. But I would say probably the most sensitive or specific, I would say, is going to be the sensation of palpitations.
What is the treatment for it? Somebody notices this and maybe they immediately say, I need to go to my doctor, or it is, I guess a two-part question, doctor, would be, number one, how are you then able to determine that somebody has gone, is suffering from holiday heart syndrome? And then what would the treatment be once you're able to figure out that there may be an issue?
Yeah, so if patients happen to go into atrial fibrillation and develop this sort of holiday heart syndrome, there are a number of things that we can do to get patients back into rhythm. First of which is just using medication. So there are several different medications that we could either prescribe, and you can pick up from your pharmacy, or if you come to the hospital, the ER, they can administer through an IV that can help slow the heart rate down, right, alleviate those palpitations, and oftentimes will help convert patients back into a normal rhythm. Apart from that, there are also procedures that we can do called ablations to help treat these rhythm disturbances. But usually as it relates to holiday heart syndrome, if we think that the trigger was alcohol consumption, if we encourage patients to try to minimize alcohol intake, oftentimes these things will sort of get better on their own.
Dr. George is my guest, cardio-electrophysiologist from Franciscan Health. Doctor, when we talk about holiday heart syndrome, and especially let's say somebody's listening and they say, hey, I'm aware of the fact that this alcohol consumption or binge consumption, sometimes maybe even more than I had planned on having to drink, can become a factor. Is there anything that one can do either preventatively or even after the fact? I don't want to say self-medicate, but maybe from a dietary standpoint that could help or assist in this throughout.
Yeah, so I would say short of decreasing alcohol intake, there isn't really anything that you would be able to take, or ingest sort of over the counter that may help to mitigate the severity of the episode. Oftentimes, in a lot of instances, these things will fortunately get better on their own, but that's not always the case, meaning that sometimes a patient or an individual will have to come to the hospital to get some sort of intervention to help terminate the episode and get that individual back into a normal rhythm. But as far as, things to consume or not consume afterwards, short of just, avoiding alcohol, that's really the first thing that we would tell an individual.
Okay, lastly, doctor, so many people, I think, when they hear heart, they think immediately, in the wintertime, people think, shoveling snow and, heart attack and those things. And I think that unfairly, there is, especially when you're doing a sports talk radio show, there's the thought that, like, this is a man's issue. This is a male thing. I know for those that are listening to the program with, wives, daughters, or for females that are listening as well, the reality is that heart disease is also something that can affect and does affect women. Are the symptoms any different for a woman than a man, and or the treatments any different from woman to man?
Yeah, so as it relates to this, we actually would sort of, group individuals sort of together. So we don't necessarily see any sort of discrepancies in the burden in males versus females. We say it's sort of an equal offender, So, and as far as treatments are concerned, we would generally treat individuals the same. As it relates to patients that have coronary artery disease and heart attacks, particularly in females, those individuals can present with different symptoms, but as it relates to atrial fibrillation and holiday heart, oftentimes there's a lot of overlap And like I said, there's a spectrum of what patients may feel. Some are going to be very symptomatic, some minimally symptomatic. But if something feels off, in those instances, we say call your doctor, come to the ER, get evaluated, because you're going to know your body better than anybody else. And if something just doesn't seem right, then that's the best time to come in to get evaluated.
Doctor, around here, everybody's heart's going to feel better if Indiana beats Ohio State on Saturday. That's going to happen, right?
Yeah, for sure that's going to happen. That better happen.
That is the official, that's the sports take of the day right there. Definitely going to happen, says Dr. George from Franciscan Health, but of course they got to play the game on the field first. Doctor, the most important thing is win or lose, we want to make sure that everybody is winning during the holidays and they are being safe and they are aware of holiday heart syndrome, the alcohol intake, and everything that goes with it. I certainly appreciate the time on a very important subject matter and always appreciate the time from Franciscan Health.
Likewise, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it so much. Again, Dr. Phil George, who is a cardio-electrophysiologist for Franciscan Health. We'll come back. We'll find out what J&V's got cooking. We'll get you set up one last time for the weekend of football that is upon us here on this Friday edition, Query & Company. Because J&V's actually at Tiebreakers right now as we speak. Crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 for Love Heating and Air, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. The very best 24-hour on-call maintenance. They treat you like family. And like I said, the integrity of a company that's going to come out, and if it's a small job, whether it be a furnace clean, something like that, they're not going to make it a big job. They're going to be honest with you and take care of you. J&V joins us now. He is at Tiebreakers Indy, new spot, 339 Mass Ave, and it is the place to be, John, all weekend is going to be downtown Indy.
Let me tell you this, too. Rob is also the owner of the Whistle Stop, and Rob is the owner of Tiebreakers here. So if you know the Whistle Stop, and we've been there a number of times and done live shows, that is Rob here, and Wayne is here. They are co-owners, but Rob owns Whistle Stop. And this is right across from Bakersfield on Mass Ave here. It's called Tiebreakers. And if you know anything about Rob and what he does, I mean, they go absolutely to the highest of levels. This is a fantastic place and a great venue to have a Bud Light Blue Friday.
I'm sitting here. Listen, I'm looking right now on their Facebook page. That food looks outstanding, beyond outstanding at Tiebreakers.
Well, I mean, you just know, the history of Whistle Stop, and we'll talk about that with Rob a little bit later on, too. But, I mean, you bring so much of that same elite-level quality to a place like this, and Mass Ave continues to get better and better. But this is the absolute heart of Mass Ave, where we are right now. So it is awesome. I am proud to be here. I did want to give a shout-out, Jake, really quick. We were at the Garage in Columbus yesterday, and so many people I got to thank because it was spectacular. It was, and sometimes you question whether or not our signal even gets down there. But Robin, the owner, and we had Spencer Thompson of Thompson Furniture come out. He made us all Yetis. You have an IU Yeti that he made thermos-wise for you as well. He made everybody, all the shows, all the producers Yetis. And, Matt from AAA came out, and I think who else? Christian was from Brown County Music Center. It was awesome, and I can't wait to go back. And it just takes people, and we all get together and have a good time on the radio, and it makes it even extra special, and yesterday was down in Columbus.
By the way, $6 burger with waffle fries at Tiebreakers, and those burgers look outstanding. And don't even get me started on, I'm looking right here at the ribs and the nachos. Man, you got it made over
why don't you just come over here, and you can hang out and do it like a second show and be a co-host, and I'll get you all hammerlocked. I'm good at that. I think Hank is going to show up. He mentioned maybe Tricia Whitaker is going to show up a little bit later on too. So yeah, we'll put you half in the bag over here a little bit late. We're Shannon. We'll get Shannon half in the bag too.
Yeah, well, actually, about 5 minutes from now, she's getting ready to turn on the radio.
Yes, we'll get her over here and have a little fun with it. So no, we've never seen anything like this. Jake, I mean, seriously, as far as IU is, can never see anything like this.
It's John. I never thought I'd see it, man. I mean, listen, for 75 years, the most pinnacle moment of Indiana football was a cameo spot in the background of Breaking Away, right? And now here they are.
Yeah. I mean, I never would have. Remember, I think 3 years ago, you and I were talking that if you were ever just bowl eligible, that was going to be enough.
Totally.
And now consider what we're talking about. It is incredible. And even when you had a taste of it during COVID and that really strange kind of Tom Allen winning season and, LEO and all that, and, that had a quick fade. But this has got staying power right now because it seems like, as Brad Stevens used to say, everybody has to be pushing in the same direction, and everybody. And it seems like now down there, everybody's pushing in the same direction.
They are. It's going to be a ton of fun. Gives us plenty to talk about on Monday and a huge party celebration atmosphere downtown. Tiebreakers on Mass Ave is where J&B will be, and we'll be there. We'll throw it out to you in just a couple minutes here, John.
Thanks, pal.
All right, J&V will be taking things over here. Thanks again to Kevin Bowen as well as JP Shatter, Chris Dittoe for joining me on the program today, and Todd Blackledge. Really good conversation about that and breaking down this game. We'll talk about all of it. You folks have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you out and about downtown Indianapolis over the course of the weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday. I appreciate you listening to Query & Company.